ghost light. What is this phenomenon? After the intro. Hello everyone, I'm Edison Boventura. Welcome to our channel. And today I'm bringing you a phenomenon that occurs in various parts of the world and is called ghost light, right? Usually it appears on roads. But before I talk to you about this interesting phenomenon, I wanted to know if you're subscribed to the channel or not. If you're not subscribed, go there quickly. Subscribe to our channel now. Become a supporter or a member of our channel because you'll be helping our work in unidentified flying object investigation. So without further delay, let's get to this interesting case. Initially, I'm going to talk about the phenomenon that mainly occurs in a certain region of the United States between Oklahoma and Missouri. And this phenomenon in the United States is called spook light, right? Ghost light, right? And what happens? Since 1800, this phenomenon has appeared on the roads in that region, especially on the border between Oklahoma and Missouri. One of the first reported cases like this happened in 1866. And it created such a big mystery there, right? No one could identify what that light was, that was appearing. So many people were watching that they ended up calling the United States Army Corps of Engineers, who ended up concluding that it really was a mysterious light, right? It wasn't a car headlight, it wasn't any natural phenomenon, it was something unexplainable, right? And then this phenomenon also became known as hornet spook because of a certain location, right? There you have a kind of walkway, some bridges that you cross, which in fact was also called the Devil's Walk for a while because those lights would appear. Some people interpreted it as something haunted, a ghost, a spirit, for example, of the indigenous people who lived in that region in the past. So it's really interesting. The descriptions of this light, right, ghost? They said it was about the size of a basketball, sometimes a little bigger. Some people even said it was a tennis ball. Right? Really small, right? But it was usually basketball sized or larger. It rises inside Wupierhongas. Speaking was sweet, an ethical reflexive gesture. It's not a matter of into the cars. Is that really what you heard? So it was something terrifying there and mainly associated with the ghostly theme. I'm going to show you now one of those photos where the light appears far in the distance, and it was taken in Missouri in Newton County. And the people there observed this object with a lot of fear. Many times, this glowing ball also wouldn't approach the passers-by, the people who came there to observe this unsettling phenomenon. This phenomenon was so talked about at the time that they ended up making some periodicals, some small newspapers where they shared these accounts from people who observed these lights. So, for example, we have this little newspaper here, the 3-state Spotlight, which talked about the phenomenon in 3 states in the United States. In addition, a book was also written by the local writer and historian named Larry Wood. He wrote Diosarki's Spotlight, History, Legend, and Speculation. So, it's also a very interesting book that brings this phenomenology from the United States. In this book, there's even a very interesting case that he mentions, which was the first case that happened. It would have been in 1886 when supposedly this light ended up driving some settlers out of their cabins, out of their homes, right? It was a really frightening thing, but it's a story that people tell around here. Besides this author, we also have a female author and paranormal investigator, Lisa Livingston Martin, who wrote several little books about spotlight stories. So this paranormal author has contributed a lot to spreading information about this phenomenon in the region as well. And to finish, another writer who wrote in the 1940s, in 1947, his name is Vance Randolph, and his book is Ozark Magic and Folklore, Magic and Folklore. Right? About this phenomenon, is that it? He said that he himself observed the phenomenon 3 times, right? And then he ended up deciding to write this interesting book. They even created a museum there in the region to honor this phenomenon, which is the Spotlight Free Museum, right? It's a museum that's been there for a long time and deals with this interesting phenomenon. Now I'm going to show you another photo that was taken in Gordon, Arkansas, which is another place in the United States where we have a very similar phenomenon that's been happening since the 1930s, right? And this small town of Gordon also has ghostly stories. And people believe that the first case happened there. It happened in the 1930s because of a man who was brutally murdered on the railroad tracks there in 1931. And from then on, it's his ghost that is said to be haunting the area. So, there's also this photo from Arkansas, which tells about a phenomenon very similar to what we used to observe between Oklahoma and Missouri. In the United States, still in the Florida region, starting from the 1970s, we also have phenomena being reported there. There's even a news article, The Phantom Lights, that have haunted drivers in Florida for 60 years. And what does this article say? It says that the lights that appeared there were also called the Oviedo lights. And they were bluish glows that would show up there from time to time. On the road, they were even mistaken for car headlights, but when these lights got closer, or when cars approached these lights, people realized they had nothing to do with the car. It was a completely different phenomenon, It usually happened from 8 p.m. until around midnight in a place called Snow Hill Road, which is a stretch that connects the cities of Chilwater and Geneva in Seminole County. And according to the American newspaper New York Post, the journalist and historian also Jason Barney, he tells and researched this legend for many years. He also said that he always saw these lights coming, always coming from the south, and that they usually have a ghostly appearance, like a moving train. It's a really weird thing. So, over there in the United States, we have this phenomenon, but this phenomenon is reported in several parts of the world, including Brazil. In Brazil, I'm going to talk a little bit about Brazil now. We have, for example, the book by Antonio Faleiro, who is a pioneer, a ufologist, a pioneer. Is he still alive? He still lives in Passatempo, Minas Gerais. And he wrote this book, Unidentified Flying Object S in Brazil, Mysterious and Ancient, where he addresses legendary themes, folklore, and associates them with the unidentified flying object phenomenon. On page 81, he starts from page 80. He brings up the phantom light phenomenon here, right? And this phantom light phenomenon It was described in a newspaper called Alto San Francisco in its August 27, 1978 edition in P11 in Minas Gerais. And what's in this book? There are some interesting accounts that happened in the towns, for example, Pimenta, São Roque de Minas, Piumi, right? And in this newspaper article, we have the testimony of Chiquinho Arantes, right? Did it happen in the 70s? I'll read it here for you so we don't miss any details. So, Chiquinho Arantes, he said the following about this phantom light phenomenon. On one occasion, it was around 8:30 post-meridium. Yeah, I was on duty heading to Doresopolis, and in the city of Ponte de Araras, I noticed a car with only one headlight coming down from the other side of the bridge. And since the road was narrow, I stopped to let it pass. But after a while, I noticed that the car was taking a long time to come up on this side. I figured it must have had a flat tire or something like that, so I decided to go down and check. When I got down there on the bridge, after the curve, I saw that there was nothing wrong. That's when my hair stood on end. It could only have been that light, since there was no other road, no other detour, nothing. Just brush on both sides. That's Chiquinho's account. There's another account as well, which was provided by Joaquim Olimpio de Almeida, told in February 1978. He says the following. I'll play it for you as well. One time I was going to Vargem Bonita for work, but this time I was alone. It was around 11:30 at night. There near Balbino, I saw a light to the right of the road, about 3,000 meters away, in the northeast direction from the car. I pulled over to the shoulder, rolled down the window to get a better look, and it came closer until it passed to my right, about 20 meters off the road. Then it suddenly turned toward the mountain and I kept watching until it disappeared. It was big, about 60 or 70 centimeters in diameter, and it was moving about 4 meters above the ground at a speed of around 50 kilometers per hour. Its color was somewhere between yellow and red, but its light seemed to flicker. From the front, it looked just like a big headlight, and from behind, I thought I saw a shadow appear. In other words, he saw a person there, right, behind that little glowing ball that appeared on the road. On page 83 of the book, there's also a comment about a legend called the Phantom Car, which is very similar to these lights, the spotlight, the ghost light, right? And also, if we think about it, fireballs, boitata, mãe do ouro, it's all in the same category, right? And this phenomenon of the lights doesn't just appear in Passatempo or these regions, it also shows up in São Tomé das Letras Luminarias and other cities in Minas, and even in the countryside of São Paulo. I've already heard some interesting cases. The most recent case like this, which also had a photo in Pinuí, happened on the Minas Gerais 341 highway in February 2018. And it was reported in a news story by Television Bambuí and Television Tapirei Minas Gerais Television. So, there are two photos that were taken by a reservist from the military police. And he was coming back from Vargem Bonita, from São Roque, heading to Pinuí. And he ended up observing this phenomenon, which kept making maneuvers. And he took 2 photographs of this luminous phenomenon. I'm going to read here then a passage where he tells a bit of the story, okay? This story has a section where he speaks and another that's narrated. Is that correct? It was around 9 p.m. when the soldier was driving with his wife at the wheel on the Minas Gerais 341 highway. About a league after the communities of São José dos Cabrestos, which is Campinópolis, heading towards Pinuí, it wasn't raining, but the sky was filled with heavy clouds. That's when he talks, right? That's when I saw a very bright light, an intense orange, flickering just above the vegetation at the edge of a pasture. No noise, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, that light, right? It went up and down, keeping its speed, and a little ahead of the car, high above, you could see the moon between the clouds. So there was no way to confuse it. I mean, there was no way to confuse it with the moon. It was really something else. And then he ends here. There's a longer account and all, but he says he never saw anything like it, and he was really scared. His wife too. Afterwards, the light ended up dissipating in a blackout. It simply went out and disappeared. In this Pinhui region, we basically have 4 areas, right? That make up the municipality, but the areas with the highest incidence are the localities of Motas and Tapiocanga. And the last appearance that happened was around the 1990s, but since the 60s and 70s, this phenomenon has been appearing in the region. The last case that happened was on January 25, 1995, on the property of the farmer Divino Fernandez Martins. And he said he was awakened by a noise, a sound. Around 1:20 in the morning, he opened the door and was surprised. His yard, his land there, was completely lit up by a strange light coming from a kind of beacon that was hovering about 10 meters high and about 100 meters away from his house. The event was also witnessed by his wife, and the sighting lasted about 2 minutes. And then suddenly it went out and disappeared. So, there are many reports about this ghost light. Ufologists believe it may be associated with a probe phenomenon of a smaller flying object, maybe remote controlled, of small magnitude, and that it occasionally haunts people. Others think it could be something related to a ghost, a haunting, an accident that happened, or even natural phenomena. Sometimes it's actually just confusion with car headlights. But what do you think? I want you to leave your opinion in the comments about the ghost light, this phenomenon that haunts not only the United States, but also many other parts of the world and Brazil as well. And I want to ask again, if you're not subscribed, go there now, subscribe, and see you in the next video podcast live with Edison Boaventura.